This video is going to show you Grandmaster Nightfall getting platinum rank on the Corrupted during the Season of the Deep. For those who just want to see that, then skip to the timestamps. But over that, I can show you what I was using, the build, etc. So there'll be a dim link in the description, so I'm not going to go over each individual mod and each individual fragment. Just copy what you see from the dim link or on screen. The only thing that's unorthodox about this run is that I used Arc Staff as my super as opposed to Gathering Storm, and that information will be in the run itself, why I done that. We're using Lucky Pants as our exotic, which buffs hand cannons, with the exotic hand cannon Malfeasance, which does additional damage to taken enemies. It's insane, this build. This is the perfect thing for Corrupted. It's just too fun not to use it, so I highly recommend that you use it. Weapons wise, we've got a Solar Scout Rifle for overloads, an additional overload choice, because we do have pulse grenades on the Jolt that do overload, I know that, but I like the Solar Scout for the end, for the boss fight. And I recommend you use a add clear style weapon for your heavy slot. Rockets or machine guns, I don't recommend linears. Linears you don't need to use. You don't need to use a linear, I don't think. Because of the build and what goes on with it. So that's the setup that I used. So as soon as you start your run, you want to overload the initial captain as soon as possible. The quicker you do this, the better, so that you can outright kill this overload and get to the back of the map, because that's your ultimate goal here, is to kill this overload and then get to the back of the map. Now he got stunned twice then, I didn't even use my scout. Why is that? Well, because when you jolt a target, they get stunned twice. They get stunned by the initial impact of the grenade. They then get stunned again if you do continuous damage while they're jolted. So having known that, you don't have to actually use overload weapons to stun a champ, providing that you've got a grenade. But sometimes it's in your interest to stun with the scout. Depends on the situation. But generally speaking, in this video, I will stun with the grenade, then whip out Malfeasance, and then do the Lucky Pants setup. Which, if you don't know how to do that and how it works, I'll explain it as it goes on. But what I'm doing right here is stalling for time a little bit. So I could kill this Ultra quicker than this, but I'm not going to. Reason being is because I want my super. I want a bit of super energy off him. I'm farming super energy off him. So we're going to do that first. She's nearly dead now. And basically, now there is an overload. There's actually two overloads in this section. Well, there's one overload initially. If you kill a portion of the enemies, another overload spawns. To get platinum rank, you do not need to kill any champions outside, where I just was. So that champ is a skip. Very much similar to Devil's Lair that I done the other day, where I skipped the first overload. It is the same thing here. Most GMs in the game have what's known as I call it as a free token, that you are allowed to skip at least one champ, but providing that you kill every other champ that spawns, you still get platinum rank. Now, Corrupted has had a bad history with champions, but I think now it's not too bad. It's not as buggy as it was. There is still some bugs with it, with one of the champs, but for the most part, it's not too bad for the platinum rating. So yes, you can skip the first overload enemy outside. So we're going to get a scan here. We are 90% to our super, which is good, because it's going to be a super that we're going to end up using. It is a Roman super Arc Staff, of course. On this first phase, you want to jolt all the targets, get a pulse grenade down, and then whip out your machine gun or Malfeasance. Up to you. They both work well. And try and kill as many Scions as possible. Then you want to come behind this wall here, and you can actually pick up the relics without being hit by the Void Orb, because the Ultra that's still shielded at the minute keeps doing his orbs. But if you stand behind the pillars like I just did when you're picking up orbs, right, then he won't hit you with the Void Orb, or less likely to. Now I'm going to speed up the footage here just for the next minute or so, because what I'm doing here is I'm farming super again. This isn't a cheese. I'm just using the intended mechanics from the game, which is when you shoot a champion, an ultra, or a major, with any weapon, you get an increased recharge rate to super, to intellect. They reworked this a long time ago now. I still feel as though people don't understand this whole thing. If you hit a target with a fast fire weapon, you even get more super energy, or like a rapid fire frame fusion, or a machine gun, or a trace rifle. Obviously, I'm just hitting him with the scout because I don't want to waste heavy. I'm in no rush to kill him too quick, and Malfeasance will kill him too quick. So I'm just farming super because I'm gonna want a super for round 2 at some point. So I may as well farm it here when things are relaxed. The second phase is the opposite side of the ghost. Do not get that wrong. Where your ghost is scanning right now, it's the opposite side. So again, jolt the scions. There is an actual round 2 of scions here, so try and, if your pulse nade is still up, oh, mine ran out because I pulse naded maybe a fraction too soon. So there are a couple of scions alive, but that's not a problem too much. Every time you get your dodge back, do that as well, because we want to get a pulse nade up. I'm doing a bit of ad clear here, but I've overcommitted just a little bit. The taken stuff on the floor actually nearly killed us there, so it wasn't really the ads. So just, you got to pay attention to where the taken stuff is on the floor, because that does tick damage to you. So this part isn't too bad. I actually prefer this round to phase 1, because for the most part you're pretty safe if you keep doing your map rotation. Like this, if the Centurion does that taken boop, jump over his head. That should be always your goal, right? Jump over his head, do a 360 turn, and then hit him in the back with the orb, right? But what you want to do now is break the shields off the 2 phalanxes. Sorry, that's what they're called, phalanxes. Then super. My super wasn't very good here because I was like stuck, right? Which was annoying. But we still killed both phalanxes. That is the goal out of this super, is to kill both phalanxes so that you've isolated the phalanxes away from the taken knight. The taken knight should always be taken last because the taken knight is less threatening. The phalanxes are always a threat, and they can ambush you as well. One can go one way around, like clockwise, one can go anti-clockwise and then meet you in the middle, and then they melt you. Like, even if you've got the right resistances on, they melt you. So you've got to be careful. That's why my whole strategy of this Roman super thing is paying off for me. Like, if I ran Gathering Storm in this run, like, just imagine this, I'm doing the run and I have Gathering Storm on, there's a couple of times where I could have probably died, right? So it just goes to show, like, I know everyone's using like Gathering Storm and stuff, but don't sometimes you don't have to use it. Sometimes it's better off with a Roman super. Our build revolves around DPS from Malfeasance anyways. The Gathering Storm super is adding nothing to the run. I repeat again, the Gathering Storm super would be adding nothing to the run. Only thing it would add was less amount of time spent in here, but it would be more risky running that super, because if you miss Gathering Storm on a captain on final phase, you kind of screwed up. You've screwed up massively, and you could end up being in a wipe for you, especially if you're 40 to 50 minutes in on a run. Even 30 minutes into a run, you wipe because of one panic super that you used and you messed up. The Roman super doesn't suffer from that, because the job of my super is DPS, not at all. It's only for survivability and ad clear, because that's what I needed. I don't need DPS because actually Malfeasance deals with everything in the run. The only things it doesn't deal with is, like, you know, ridiculous ranges at like 40 to 30 meter ranges. That's where the scout comes in. The solar captains, the solar knights are annoying on the final boss. That's where the scout comes in. Whereas Malfeasance is going to be less reliable for us. Now, you do need to have the catalyst. Like, I would highly, yeah, you do. In how I'm doing this, you definitely need to have the catalyst. So it's available via strikes, Crucible, Gambit. So I was doing a ton of Nightfalls because it was double loot. I didn't get it once off a Nightfall. I stepped in onto the strike playlist, got its second strike playlist that particular day. It might have just been coincidence, but maybe just do the strikes. I don't know. It is meant to drop from Nightfalls though as well. It's part of the playlist, so it's just a case of, if you want to do this run like this and have a bit of fun, you've got to farm the catalyst up, because it adds Vorpal weapon plus range. So the range is going to help out. The Vorpal's huge because we're stacking buffs on top of buffs here. So not only does it do additional damage to taken enemies, right, but it stacks with Lucky Pants, and the Vorpal weapons also stacks with Lucky Pants. This results in you being able to one-cycle pretty much all champions in the game. Like, my shots weren't even on point there, and I actually one-cycled that Unstoppable. Bear in mind, this hand cannon does suffer from range drop-off, which it naturally would. The actual impact shots do, but the slugs that are attached to the enemy doesn't. They are not... I believe it works like explosive rounds, where they do the damage no matter where you're standing, but the impact damage won't. The Shrieker turned on here, that was kind of annoying. Generally that doesn't happen. I don't know why that happened. So deal with the second Unstoppable from range like this. Like, even though you are using like a, you know, a 180 RPM hand cannon, right? It doesn't behave like any other 180 RPM hand cannon you can think of. It's its own thing, very unique. Now I know the buffing hand cannons. I don't know if Malfeasance is going to be getting the buff also. I haven't read any twabs or researched it. I should have really, but I presume this is what they're going to do. They're not going to buff Malfeasance because it's already strong enough with how it is. If they give a blanket buff to hand cannons plus Malfeasance, Malfeasance will be absolute. It'll be the best gun in the game if they end up doing that. But I bet they'll end up saying blanket buff to hand cannons, Malfeasance is excluded, because that's what they do. That's what they've been doing of recent times with guns and sandbox changes. So we'll just see what they do, but it doesn't matter either way. But Malfeasance right now is strong anyways, no matter what you do. And it has Unstoppable intrinsic. So whenever you're doing a Grandmaster with Unstoppable champions there, then it's always worth using it. Plus, you could pair it with Strand and not use any champion mod weapons and just use Strand with Malfeasance. That would work out really well. So, this section can be slow because the Shriekers, they absolutely melt. Do not underestimate the Shriekers. Like, you cannot show yourself to a Shrieker for long. So you need to do a bit of burst damage. So anytime you've got your out of luck debuff timer removed, and then you swap to a fully loaded Malfeasance, you will get the Lucky Pants damage bonus. So you need to remember when you're actively playing with this build to never not have your Malfeasance reloaded in the background when you swap to it. So always be running around with your Scout in your hands, or the machine, or your Heavy in your hands, right? What you can do is do a phase of, like on a champ, let's say you're from a lot of range and you're not one cycling the champ, or an ultra target, is do your Lucky Pants damage, you'll then get the debuff, do some more damage even though you're not getting the Lucky Pants damage. When out of luck is about to end, reload Malfeasance, swap to energy, swap back, and then rinse and repeat the damage circle. You can do it like that. It's up to you, but just make sure that you are utilising your Lucky Pants setup, lest there be no point of putting the boots on. I highly think, I think this is literally the best setup, apart from maybe my super choice, but that is my choice to run a Roman Super. So other people would say, well, I would have rather run Garvin Storm. And I would say that's fair enough, but for me, because of the final boss, and because of what's been going on this week with Corrupted for me, I wanted zero risk, almost zero risk of dying when I'm on that phase 3 of the final boss. So that's why I ultimately went with a Roman Super, because when you're doing these builds and all this, right, the old-fashioned rule still works from way back when I used to do the solos in 2017-18. You need to spec for not only the strike but the boss as well. It's no good you just specking for, oh, I'm going to get a fast clear just doing it like this, but then when you get to the boss, your strategy is failed because the build isn't really spec'd for the boss. So you need to spec for boss first, strike second. There's nowhere in this strike where you can really die apart from elevator. So it's really only the elevator you've got to worry about and the final boss. Everything in between is just busy work. It's just you taking damage, damaging enemies from a range. That is literally all there is to it. There's not a lot to Corrupted now. It's just this little section. Now I'm doing a mini exploit here. Is this giving me any gains? Not so much. It just means that I can kill the unstoppable Hive champion, right? Because you need, how you do this, because you're going between Taken and Hive realm. People who are new to this, right, they won't have a clue what's going on. But basically, you need to do it like this. You need to do the Hive realm first. That includes killing the Hive Ogre at the back of the map and the unstoppable champion. Once you do those two things, right, you'll then be ported to the Taken realm, and then you won't port back to the Hive realm because the main boss has been killed. But I'm doing the exploit where you crouch on the stairs like so, right? You can't move, so you need to head glitch those stairs good. That's why sometimes you saw I messed up a couple of times on my head glitch. Like, what I mean by that, I mean you can hit your unstoppable champion, but the unstoppable champion can't hit you. So there's a bit of a knack to it, right? You only need to crouch and stay still when the castaway timer is about a second or less, and then just stay still. I mean, you can still kind of fire your gun as long as you're just crouched and you don't move. It'll work. Like, look, like so. It's a handy little exploit because it just speeds up this section a little bit, because it is quite annoying going back and forth. Now, things like Gavin Storm would help me out here, right? It would do, but who cares? There's no timer here. We're literally just killing a boss. So, yes, Gavin Storm would speed this section up, but it hasn't got, in my opinion, as much use at the final boss as what my setup has on. And I think somebody who hasn't done the solo GM Corrupted, wanting to do Malfeasance, this will be better for them than using Gavin Storm. It would just be a slower run. It just ultimately means a slower run. That's all it means. That's all it means. But somebody who's soloing this Corrupted, are you really solo farming this? Who the hell is solo farming this Nightfall? Is anyone actually doing that? No, they're not. Everybody, even the high-end players, they'll get their solo clear, upload to YouTube, and that's it. The farming will be done in a fire team, because obviously you would do that. Now, I'm on the right-hand side here. This is fantastic. Like, I've done this perfect. So what I'm doing is I'm baiting the unstoppables, because I know that they're surrounding the Taken boss. But I'm jumping up just enough so the unstoppable champion sees me, but the boss doesn't. And this just means that I'm going to still be able to get platinum rank because of this. It means that I've isolated myself away from the boss, and it's just me and the unstoppable. The second unstop, I didn't have my Lucky Pants buff just because of how the timing worked out. But that's why I know another mechanic, and this helps me out in a lot of GMs. When you stop an unstoppable, they think about it like this. They actually don't know where you are when you stop them. You've almost concussed them, right? When they regain their footing, they look around. If they don't see you, they don't know where you are. Whereas if I overcommitted to damage and didn't get him finishable, he would then boot me off the map. So do you see how the timing works for that? So even though on one hand, didn't have Lucky Pants buff, I saw that up and coming, so quickly hid behind cover before that unstoppable comes back to consciousness, right? And then we can stop him multiple times like that without the unstoppables booping us off the map. Or even without the boss booping us off the map, because that can happen. Because behind me there's actually no fence, there's no wall, there's just emptiness, so you'll actually get booped off the map. So that's how you do this portal thing. It will actually despawn all the enemies. The void shields, the solar shields, all that rubbish. Right, that stuff will despawn. You can then literally walk past the shriekers because they won't open up unless you jump. And then you go through the portal. And then you're in the Hive realm. That's why you do it Hive first, then Taken realm. Because if you do it the other way around, it's actually different. But you will end up coming here, obviously, back to the Hive realm. But actually, no, the difference is, let me get this right, is because you're going to have Hive enemies here. So Arc Knights and stuff. So imagine how much of a nightmare that would be to your run. if you're doing it the wrong way around. So make sure you do Taken Realm, sorry, Hive Realm first, then Taken Realm. The unstoppable champions get stuck on these fences, but you can actually melt them with Malfeasance through them. So just if they get stuck, that's fine. All I will say is if they do get stuck, be careful, they might port on top of you. This week I've had an increased... I haven't had any error codes, right? I'll say the game's been quite stable. But what I have had is ads teleporting a little bit. If you didn't notice earlier, the Centurion teleported on us and nearly killed us at the elevator section just because he ported. So that's happening, and Sedia has been a nightmare to me. There's been 3 runs, this week, where she's one-shot me 3 times. 3 times. And like I say, I'll have the video up before this one of you showing you that. And I can talk a bit about that because this bit's just busy work. You can see what I'm doing. I'm just painting the unstoppable champions. So to give you a little bit of a history of Cydia and this one-shot thing, right? So, with it being a Grandmaster Nightfall, Arc Burn is on for the enemies, or Arc Fret. They now refer to it in the game as Arc Fret. Cydia's attack is Arc based, but it's also area of effect based, which means Concussive Dampener and Arc Resist will protect against this attack. Now we know that you can double up on resistances and use double Arc Resist, and you can stack that with Concussive Dampener to get the maximum resistance. You pair that with tier 10 resilience, you should be tanking a lot of stuff. The thing is weird, also we've got electric armor. Let's not forget this season we have electric armor as well, right? So even though this is the case, Cydia still has one-shot potential on you. There are 3 main phases on the boss. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. Phase 1 and 2 are the times when I get one-shot. I've never been one-shot on the Phase 3. When I mean one-shot, I really do mean it. I don't mean, you know when PvP players say, I'm one-shot, and they're not. They're like half HP. I don't mean it in that sense. I mean from 100% HP to 0. That she has one-shot potential. And now, there's a lot of different theories, and I've spoke to people in the past about it, because how long has Corrupted been as a Grandmaster now? So we've had a lot of opportunities to talk about it, because it's happened to countless players. And there's theories. One theory I heard, which sounded really good, was, well, your Guardian has a crit. So enemies can not only body shot you, but they can crit you. So if Cydia crits your head, if the attack hits your head or your body, say, it's a one-shot. That is false, because she's hit me in the toe and one-shot me. We actually don't know, without having a like instant kill cam to look at us dying, we actually can't prove or disprove this. You know, like in Call of Duty with a kill cam, imagine that. You die and you can have an instant replay and look at your orb. That would be so cool, because you could learn actually information off that. That's a good idea. But you know what I'm saying? We don't have a third person view of what's going on, because it's just hitting us in the face, or so it seems, the attack. But it's not. It can hit you at certain... It can hit you anywhere. I will say if the attack only hits you a little bit, you'll take barely any damage. And I'll be like, what? Why is the damage so inconsistent? So Cydia itself, there's so much inconsistency with how much damage she does to you that it, like I say, it's a problem. So that's theory 1. Theory 1 is that we take crit damage. That's false, because I've got footage to disprove that. The second one is that it's just that she's just bugged. Right? It's as simple as that. That she just does inconsistent bug damage, and it's, I don't know, something to do with the servers. I mean, my internet connection's average, right? So I don't know if it's based on our side or server side, like Bungie server side. I think it's more Bungie server side, because it's happened to other players with probably better internet connection than mine. So I think that's also wrong. My theory is this. If you think about it, when you're fighting on phase 1 and 2, you should know what these phases are. If you don't, I think you need to maybe do some research with Corrupted. Phase 1 and phase 2, you fight from range. Phase 3 is close quarters. So phase 1 and 2, These are the times I've been one-shot by her. And I think her attack is velocity based. I think the longer it travels, the more damage it does. Because if you're right next to her and she attacks you with it, it just tickles you. It's like literally doing no damage at all. But then when you're 40 meters away from her, and the sound of the attack has a different audio cue as well, which I've noticed. So there's some oddities with it. And I'm just saying, if you're not into getting bugged, like that's what it's going to be. You're going to get one shot by a bug, basically. If you're not into that, this isn't for you. Because I'm telling you now, there will be times when you attempt this, it's going to happen. I'm on console. Is it a console-related thing? I don't think so, but I don't know. Is it linked to frames? Because we're playing 60 frames per second. I don't know. I see no one discussing it, which does piss me off a little bit. I go on Reddit, no one's talking about it. Like, why? Is there not that many people into this anymore to actually even, like, talk about it? Like, there's posts back to 2020, 2019. There's no recent posts about this information. And it does kind of annoy me, because when you want to go online and just see what other people are saying, no one's saying anything. Which then makes me question who the hell is soloing now. Is anybody soloing now? Barely anybody, and if they are, they're not even uploading because there's no view potential anyways, right? It's just like so annoying because I just want to know the answer to the question, and I know I'm not going to get the answer. I suppose I should report it as a bug, and I might actually do it because it has annoyed me this week. The fact that Corrupted's cost me a bit of time getting the solo clear just because of the one-shot potential. For no reason at all. No boss in this game should one-shot you unless it's a boss stomp. If it's a boss stomp, it should be a one-shot. But any range attacks, not one range attack should one-shot you. Not like from 100% to 0. Unless it's like... yeah, I stand by that statement. Anyways, this little section here, I like to play it from range. So there's the two invisible Minotaurs. And then there's the Ultra there's the Ultra VIP. If you overload the Ultra VIP, which yes you can overload rank and file enemies, right? If you overload him and disrupt him, the enemy will sort of strafe left and right, which is handy because when I go down there, I don't have to worry about him. So I would prefer to scout him from up here as opposed to just risking it and going down there. I could super. To be honest, I could have supered. Because I would get my super back off the next two overloads anyways. So actually, if you want to just come down here and super them with your arc staff, then do it. I think that would actually be a decent thing, because you do want your super for the boss fight, but you would get it back anyways because you're fighting two overload champs, which when you're fighting champions, as I've said earlier, you get a lot of super energy. And if you don't get it back, you could play around with the overload until you do get your super. With the first overload, make sure you kill the sniper, because the sniper, they do massive damage, and I haven't got solar resist on. So get a stun first. I just got a stun with the scout, then I nade it, then just break, then use the Malfeasance with Lucky Pants, and that one cycles champs. Very easy, because they're obviously taken as well. Now we're farming up a nade. We're amplified, so we're going to get that increased recharge rate to mobility. So I'm literally just wanting another pulse grenade because it's so valuable having a pulse grenade on these overloads. So I'll do another dodge. I've got bomber on, obviously, so that I'll get that next pulse grenade up. Same thing again, sniper first. You might indirectly stun the overload though if you use an explosive scout. If that happens, that happens. That's fine. I'm just going to use the scout now. I used the scout rather than Malfeasance there because Malfeasance could have done some un-overload damage, which means that the overload would enrage. Never shoot an overload champion, right, with a weapon that isn't overload, unless you've already overloaded them, because then you enrage them and they do that arc attack. Arc threat is on, you're going to get melted by them. If your position isn't ample, I must, like, you know, sort of stress how important it is when you're fighting them. If there's anything buggy going on with them, 'cause sometimes they enrage anyways, right, where they keep doing their arc blast attack. If you see any of that, always fight next to cover so you can strafe out of that damage. So I'm just waiting on my pulse nade here a little bit because it's just so valuable having it up because I'm going to be able to jolt targets and get a lot of ag clear potential. So on phase 1, I recommend that you use a super and you do it like this. Right, so phase 1 of damage, well, before we get damage, of course, we've got these enemies that spawn in. I think there's 2 Solar Knights, 1 or 2, and a bunch of major Scions. So we want to pulse nade first when they come here, then immediately pop super. Try and pop super before you take any damage, then just go nuts with your super. Because what's happened there is, as the enemies have jumped over, we have just jolted and melted all the enemies. Now, you saw that footage there. Are you not telling me that that's not useful? What just happened there? Are you not telling me that that's not useful? I think that's very useful, what's just happened. It's meant that I was able to clear this wave of enemies really quick. And like I say, there's no requirement for having a DPS super because you just watch how much damage we're going to do now anyways. And that's why I ended up doing this. Now I'm just testing here a little bit with the orb just to see when I throw the orb, what weapon do I have in my hands when the orb is thrown. I want my scout out because make sure that you do that. If you don't, you will mess up your damage. You need your lucky pants damage here. If you don't do it right, then you're not going to be able to do a third damage or plus. Sorry, not a third, a quarter. So make sure you have your scout in your hands or whatever your energy weapon is before you pick up the orb. Wait for boop. So I've waited for the boop, right? Then we're going to throw orb, which takes 3 orbs to take down the shield. We're on the final one. Switch to lucky pants and just try and get all your crits or as much damage as you can. Just keep spamming, right, as much as possible. Look at the damage, nearly half HP. And that's not meant. This is so weird as well. Because if you see the boss's HP bar, I don't know when this was reworked. I think it was this season. But the HP bar never used to be put into segments like that. So you see it's in quarters. That was never a thing. Right? But I think how this is meant to work is that she is hard locked when you do a quarter damage. But for whatever reason, she's kind of not hard locked as well. So if you do an insane amount of damage with whatever you're using, you sort of bypass and do more than a block, and we're not meant to. It's so weird. It's because they put that in as an afterthought. When they made Corrupted, she never had bars. It was just a timer. So it's kind of like mechanics on top of mechanics, and the game just gets confused, and you end up doing more damage. Like I would be interested to see 3 people with Malfeasance, Lucky Pants, just to see what damage she would do. She might just die instantly. I don't know. I would assume the 1 cycle's still possible. However, I haven't looked that up. I'm just thinking about that now for team-based. You'll see a lot of that next week because Corrupted is going to be the featured Nightfall next week. So this is where you stand, right? When you're on phase... Well, I still regard this as phase 1. So just to be clear, this is phase 1. When I say phase 1, I mean this section of the floating islands. When I say phase 2, that's when you're climbing up the islands, right? Where there's Solar Knights and there's an Unstoppable Champion and all that. That's phase 2. And then phase 3 is the final section where there's rocks going around and all that stuff, and the arena is very small. So this is going back to what I was saying about the one-shot capabilities of Cydia. This is where she can one-shot you. So I must stress, make sure you pitch up, you crouch behind a rock, and you just sit there and scout the enemies. Don't take any risks of getting hit by the boss even once. Like, don't be lazy in your gameplay. Like, if you need to like get to another rock for cover, like slide, use your dodge, whatever, just to get out of the cover, because it's like rolling the dice. If you're a little bit lazy with your movement and Cydia hits you, you're rolling the dice whether she one-shots you or not. And I have found in my experience of playing this GM over the years that I've played it, is that the one-shot happens now on phase 1, and then when you're climbing up the rocks on phase 2. Phase 3, I haven't had it happen, but I have actually seen somebody be one-shot on phase 3 though. I have actually seen footage of it, so I guess it's a possibility there. It's maybe less likely, right? It's maybe less likely. Who knows? This is one thing that does bother me. People say, "Oh, well, Bungie they cover They give you plenty of updates. When have they ever publicly said anything about Corrupted? When have they ever said, "Oh, we're aware of Cydia being one shot. She's doing too much damage. We'll fix that for you." When have they ever said that? Never. So things that I want to know and get fixed, they never fix, because it doesn't impact a lot of players to fix. Right? It goes under the radar because teams aren't really getting bothered by this. They get one shot by it, fine. Your teammate will go and pick you up. It's less likely to happen. But on a solo, 30, 40, 50 minutes in, it happens to you. It's stupid. And like I say, I might go and report it because I'm not pissed off about it. But I can't see them doing anything about it. And I would like an answer. Because no one has an answer. Even some of the best players, Armin GT. He was the first player that told me about it. He even got one shot through a sentinel shield with the block. The attack went through a sentinel shield and killed him. So that was the first time I was made aware of it, to be honest. And then it started to happen to me shortly after that. We're going back when Corrupted first came out. Not came out, but came out as a Grandmaster. Because when Corrupted first came out, there was no such thing as Grandmaster Nightfalls. So for this phase of damage, throw your 2 orbs. You now get an extra mechanic here. Now, the mechanic... People haven't covered this, but I'm going to cover it because this is dead important. You see, when you're looking where the rocks are coming from, they have a glowing formation. So there's 2 sets of rocks that come past you. So look, there's a glow there. See the glow? There's a glow. That means there's 2 formations of rocks coming. You need to do DPS after the second formation of rocks. Right, so now I've done my formation, swap to the hand cannon, and then just do as much damage as possible. This is easier because of the damage that we've done on the first phase. Now I'm waiting for that portal. You can actually go through the portal before it spawns if you stand exactly there. Now, did you notice the boss was hard capped HP wise there? She didn't take no more than a half. Although, it might be slightly less than half. So I've actually still bypassed that hard damage gate, kind of. But it's just sort of so weird how this sort of boss works with like HP. I hate when it's like this. Because for me, when I'm playing a GM or a strike, I just want to know structure. I want to know the boss and why he does it and what they do. I don't want, like, especially with HP and stuff, like I want to know how their HP works. I don't want inconsistencies with that. Because then what are you playing then at that point? You know, it's like they either hard cap it or they don't hard cap it. You got to pick. But they don't want to hard cap. They want to hard cap all strike bosses now. They want to leave damage gates in the game because if there's not damage gates, then there's one shot. There's a chance for the player to one phase the boss, which is what I used to do back in the day. Was solo one phase the Nightfall bosses, which was. For me, Prime D2, that was some of the most fun I had ever, was doing the old solo one phase in the bosses. That is still a thing for Warden and Nothing, because they never changed his HP bar, which I'm glad they didn't. Isn't that so good? That's maybe why maybe Warden and Nothing is my favourite GM because of that. That's one of the reasons. So we popped the super here because this is very dangerous and the Solar Knight was being a pain and hiding. So we actually stunned the Overlord with a pulse whilst in our super. So my super dealt with the Sniper, the Captain and an Overlord. In terms of value, that was really good. And that bit is annoying because if you sit back, the enemies will just hide. So the enemies are saying, no, you need to push us, lest we're not pushing you, that's it. So you've got to push up on that section. You must. It's the only way of dealing with it. Because the Overlord isn't going to peak. Even if the Overlord does peak and you get a stun, maybe 2 stuns, when the HP value of that Overlord goes down, the Overlord wants to hide. It's in their AI pattern to do this. Just like any other ad in the game. Or enemy. Like these Solar Knights. Especially shielded enemies. They seem to be even worse than any other enemy types. If an enemy has a shield, they want to hide more because you've taken down their shield, so there's an added pattern of AI in there for the enemy to go behind cover and regen their shield, then pick you again. This is a very annoying gameplay loop, but this was the original mechanic from Destiny 1. If you don't remember, just think back to Cosmodrome Arc shielded captains. What did they do? You would break their shield, they would hide. You would break their shield, they hide. That mechanic still exists in D2. It's the same thing. It's just that it's really annoying to play against in certain scenarios. And this for me is one of the worst situations in the game, where shielded enemies are just a pain. Like, this knight pushed me, jump over. Why doesn't he just jump over and push me now? I would actually prefer the knight to push, so I can actually do some damage, have a bit of a combat experience, instead of me sitting here with a scout trying to kill this damn knight who won't push. And the knight won't push at all, and we can't push the knight because Cydia could one-shot. So it's one of those situations we just sit back and wait then. Don't get me wrong, if you get some good Malfeasance shots on, you can do some really good damage to the knight. But I would prefer just to overload the knight just a little bit. Just so at least if we get hit by anything, right, then we lower their output damage. See, the Cydia hit there, hit my legs. No damage. No damage at all. 0 damage. That's why I'm playing passively. That is the reason. Try to throw your nades when there's no formations of rocks coming over. We've got a good nade finally. The nade should finish the night off by now. That's good. So if you're quick enough, sometimes, depending on how the champion spawns right over the other side of the map, sometimes you can get a stun and do some damage. But whilst doing this run, I was actually trying to think of, is there a way of me killing the unstoppable champion without actually going over there? And there is. I actually end up finding a nice place, which you'll end up seeing in a bit. But right now, what I'm doing is I'm killing the snipers from a distance, because there's 2 of them, right? So I don't want them both hitting me while Cydia hits me and stuff. So I'd rather try and kill the snipers from here, which I am getting some shots of. Right, and it just means it's safely. It just means I'm doing it safe. I'm just seeing if I can get any stuns here. I actually can. So that's crazy. Like I said, the slugs are not. They don't receive range drop off. They work exactly the same as explosive rounds. Just think of them as explosive rounds, but they're souped up version. The beauty of this build as well, I will say this, the beauty of this build that I'm using, you can use it on any element. You can do Stasis Lucky Pants Malfeasance, you can do Strand, although Strand's not quite as good. I did try the whole Strand thing. The reason being is because I would prefer if it was like Osteo with Overload SMG for Strand. It does work alright, it works alright, but you can still totally do that. You can do a Strand run. Arcs, obviously, the reason why I went with Arc ultimately is because of the Jolt. So even though they've nerfed Jolt and what they did with it, it doesn't matter. The fact that it can stun and overload twice, back to back, and you can actually melt down the champion with any other weapon that you can think of, right? Any high DPS weapon that you can think of, it means that there's actual... It's the best nade in the game for overloads, essentially. And there's no artifact mod needed for that, because it's intrinsic now, of course. So that's ultimately why I went with Arc. That is the sole reason. If it wasn't for that, I would have went with something else, maybe. But this worked out decent, because it's Arc Surge, don't forget. Like, remember, it's Arc and Strand Surge, so if you match that subclass, your kinetic weapon will get a buff, which I believe should buff with everything that you see here. Lucky Pants, Vorpal Weapon. So that's making it even more crazy. Your kinetic weapon should have a buff. Now the knights fell off, thank God for this. Doesn't mean it means I don't have to piss about with him. That's good. So this is a good spot here. Right, I was just trying it at the time. So, because the unstoppable will hide. Right, which, again, the enemy's saying, you need to push me, unless I want push. But if we get the high ground, then we can do this. See, that's what I'm on about with the Destiny 2 combat experience, and people aren't really seeing this or getting my point. Why are we having to do? Why are we doing stuff like this? Like, why have we not got enemies that are smarter and push you in interesting ways and ambush you and like, or they hide because all the ads are killed? Why? Why is an enemy hiding? Like, I want the combat experience in the game to feel a bit more diverse than what it is. I think because I have a lot of thousands of hours in the game, which you know I do, I know the actual pattern of most enemy types in the game and how they work and how the champions work. Because I've played champions with the champions since 2019. So I've been analysing them since then. We're now 2023. So you could trust that I pretty much know everything about champions and how they react to certain things, where you stand, how many ads are alive. Don't get me wrong, the game's changed a little bit now because we've got abilities that stun them, but for the most part the AI of them hasn't changed since 2019. They are still the same champions. Just the way we stun them and how effective we are at stunning them now is different compared to then. And I'm just saying, I think enemies need to be a little bit more smarter in more interesting ways so that the combat experience is tougher but also not annoying. The fact that I'm sitting behind this stupid rock fighting enemies. Like, I want enemies to push me a little bit so I have to think a bit more, that sort of thing. You know, instead of us sort of finding exploits in the enemy types and then just playing like that. On that first phase of the final phase, make sure that you're spawning the sounds. You need to jump over to the island and then jump back here. Now the interesting thing about this is you can't fight from here after this. Isn't that funny? There's a no turn back zone. Yet another mechanic that's never been labelled anywhere, and Bungie haven't publicly said anything about it because they don't care about the little things, just the big things. But that's so weird, isn't it, right? So you can't actually fight from where I just was. Only for the first half of this final phase. When we get to this, when we actually start throwing the orbs, there's a no turn back zone. Wouldn't it be so interesting if you could actually fight all the way back there? I think people would actually like this GM Nightfall a little bit more than what they do if where we fought from was a different place. Which you can fight from there, but just once you break shield you can't. But having said that about this final phase, I actually prefer it to phase 1 and 2. Why? Because the boss is less likely to one-shot me. I know what I'm doing and nothing can really kill me. Right? The boop that the boss does has a large radius for you to be affected by it, but they nerfed how much distance you get booped by a long time ago. Maybe a year ago. It could be a year by now, maybe longer. It used to be called, what was it called? Cydia's Knockback. It was a modifier. They removed it because it was stupid. It was just bad to play. Like, she's just booping off your map constantly and she keeps doing that over and over. When you break the shield, do not do DPS. Top tip, don't do DPS. The knights will spawn in, but the knights will spawn in on the opposite side of whatever side you're on. Which I didn't know this at the time. I thought they were going to spawn right there, because in other people's runs they've spawned about there. For me that didn't happen. It just means the knights don't spawn on top of you, they'll spawn somewhere else. That's why I used a pulse grenade and a super. That makes it so consistent. I know one of the knights fell off, hilariously. I know that happened, but I still would have had enough super energy to kill him. It means that if Cydia knocks me back or does excessive damage to me, I can out-tank that whilst killing the knights. Because if you don't do it like this, and see you're on Gathering Storm, you miss your super, you've got to literally rotate around the map and find a sweet time, a good time to actually do damage. Now we're actually doing damage here. So I switched to Lucky Pants with Malfeasance, you know, I had it fully loaded and all that stuff. We do that that damage. Don't start this phase without a grenade. You want to start this phase with a grenade, pick a pillar, right, and then just go ham with your punch dodge. Because at the very least, you want to do a lot of jolt. I know this looks risky, but it isn't. It isn't. It just means that you're not messing around. Don't mess around with the Scion phase, because they will duplicate out of control, and then that is a potential death. But if you do it like I say, wait behind a pillar, make sure you max HP, then peek out with a pulse grenade to jolt your first Scion. The Scions should be stunned. You can then do your punch dodge, just like you do with Assassin's Cowl, but you haven't got Assassin's Cowl on, but that's fine because of the arc buff from the GM. Your punch is going to do enough. If you at least get combo blow times 1, you're good enough to go. You're going to kill a Scion. Plus, even if you don't kill them, you're going to stun them and jolt them anyways, because you've dodged before, because of the aspect flow state. I think it's called flow state. So this is the final phase. The run is done at this point. I think there is another 2 solo captains that spawn, but it doesn't matter for us. All I say to you is, before you do DPS to the boss, make sure your Malfeasance is loaded. If you don't do that, you've messed up your damage and you've messed the timing up. Or if you're in doubt, check your hand cannon. Just check it's fully loaded. But I knew it was already. So we'll do our melt here. Don't let the boss come too close though. They'll stomp. You can actually be one shot by that. And then you'll finish the boss off. Like I say, Malfeasance does crazy damage in this. It's too good not to use. I highly recommend it for Corrupted. But that was the run for this. I hope you enjoy. Thank you.